So can you just tell me, Ian, what drew you into the aesthetics and SMPU field?
I think my artistic background, I do a lot of realism art, and at the time I was looking at tattooing, and the only real way into the tattoo industry back then was to do an apprenticeship, which was like 2-3 years. And at the time I was in recruitment, and it was like, how do I leave a salary that's 77k per year and just walk into nothing, and walk into an apprenticeship that you can't afford to pay your bills or support your family and things like that. And Vicky at the time actually said about microblading, and I was like, right, we'll give it a whirl. However, it was a bit horrendous, that microblading, I'm not going to lie. I took better to machine. But yeah, it just kind of went from there. And then I went into machine training. Then as soon as I suppose we started setting up Blarte and the training academy, then I started looking at aesthetics and really getting an interest. And I think there is an artistic talent, and I think with aesthetics, it's a lean in that way. If you look at the, Russian lips and all the different styles that have become available over the last kind of 5-6 years, it's gone from just basic lip filler to actually we're creating something. Yeah. So that's, I suppose, the tie-in being art, and I still do a lot of art now.
Yeah. So you're very artistic naturally. Was that something that you were growing up? Were you artistic growing up?
All the time, literally.
Really?
We didn't have much money when I grew up, so we used to have, liner wallpaper. My mum would buy that and just roll it on the floor.
Really?
And just
that's
draw
so
for
cute.
hours and hours and hours. And I'll just have basic pencils, whereas Arabella's got everything. And even some Sundays we'll just have an art day. We'll just get everything out and just get everything messy. So art's
cool.
still a huge part. Yeah. And I think certainly with everything from the SMP to then making something look real. And I do a lot of realism art, so I can draw you effectively like you and charcoal and pencil.
Wow.
Might take us like 3 weeks to do it.
Yeah.
But it will look 100% kind of realistic.
Wow. That's really amazing. What a talent to have.
Yeah. Because I think it's less of just a talent, but it's a passion, isn't it? It's like something you enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting though what you've said about it being artistic, because I inject fillers and I feel I'm very good at injecting lips, and I get really nice shapes because I'm artistic with the lips. But could I necessarily draw a picture of you? No. It would not look right. It would look horrendous.
Yeah.
So I agree. No, that's not going to happen.
Just get a beer mat out later. Draw it on the back.
But, so that's kind of really cool, I think, that you have actually the artistic flair is in drawing. Yeah. And I suppose that's where your fine lines and everything comes in that we've been seeing a lot on Instagram. Which is
why I've almost come back full circle back into tattooing now with the fine line stuff. But I've got no interest in, you coming in with a horror something. For me, the fine line's my niche now if I'm going to go down that route. Yeah. And I think that's quite important across the industry as a whole, finding a niche.
Do you think that you have a lot of competition in terms of other male aesthetic practitioners, SMPU artists?
The industry's huge. There's not many male PMU artists. SMP artists, it's predominantly male. And I've trained a lot of women because I suppose I've trained PMU artists to then take over SMP or aesthetics practitioners to go down that route. So we are seeing more females coming into that area. And the area as a whole, I do a lot of female hair density. And again, a lot of the SMP artists that are men, they don't.
Yeah, they do tend to do a lot of male, don't they?
Yeah, so I think for me, my client base was 99% probably women.
Oh, wow,
so
really? That high?
Well, it was because I did PMU first. So transitioning
So you
into
already
SMP,
had those clients, built those relationships, and then that's probably what made it easier for you to kind of go into that with the existing clients that you already had.
Yeah, like anything, you get a new service, you want to it needs to complement what you currently do with your client base, which is the clever way of doing it from a business point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And do you find that it's easier to train males or females when you're actually training?
I think looking at how females work as a group, I think you're very self-critical and you compare yourself to one another. So you'll look at what that girl's doing compared to what you're doing, and then you become more frustrated. I think men can be a little bit more self-centered, and they don't really care what you're doing. They're just going to have their head down and they're going to do it. That's
interesting. I think I agree with you. Yeah, because we just tend to, as women, we're very naturally competitive, I'll say. And I think, if you are in a group training setting and you are with other women and you can see that someone's doing better, you kind of like, hey, okay.
Yeah. Why
I
not?
need to, I need to go back and revisit what I'm doing, and
100%.
it becomes competitive.
And I think, again, depending on what you're teaching, your class size really matters. You know, if you're getting too many in the class, nobody's getting the value.
No. And you have to keep the groups really intricate and small,
Yeah.
because otherwise they don't get that kind of personal one-to-one care, do they?
No.
And then I think that's when the quality of your training academy goes down.
But I think it's not only that, is, you know, post-training, if you mess up on somebody's face with, you know, something like filler, you can dissolve it.
Yeah.
You can't do that with tattooing.
True.
Like, you've messed up. And that can take weeks or months to come out the skin. And during that time, that person's feeling insecure, you know, really doesn't want to go to work. I had one guy that his head was all messed up off an SMP artist.
I
to the
think
point he
I
couldn't
saw
go.
this on Instagram, and it was terrible, right?
It was like...
It was really
5-6
discoloured, and
months.
was it like green, or have I made that up?
Like, it was like bluey hairs,
was
but it
bluey,
basically looked
that
like
was it.
a Lego kind of head had been put on, and it was horrendous.
So how did that happen, Ian, then? How was that allowed to kind of happen so badly to him? What went wrong?
I think I did reach out to the artist, to be fair, and offered her a free shadowing day, which she replied.
Did you?
Yeah, because I thought...
That was so kind of you to do that.
It's immoral, isn't it, for you to put out that work? And she just blocked me.
Did she? Maybe she thought you were being rude.
No.
Maybe she
literally,
thought
it
you
was
were being
very clear.
sarcastic.
Very-
Like, maybe, do you
very
want to come
clear.
and shadow me?
No, it was very clear. But and I'd even broke down what she wasn't doing right, because a lot of it's about what you can see on the surface of the skin is different, because your skin's semi-translucent, and you've got a light that then reflects through. And I'm not going too technical into it, but how it looks is usually down to depth and pressure and things like that. And the basics just weren't there, bottom line. And I think we all make mistakes. Have I done a shit set of brow? Yes, absolutely. I've done some horrendous brows. But I think as you kind of progress as an artist, or
With
even
anything
with
that you
aesthetics,
do, yeah.
you look back and you're going, right, well, can I dissolve your lips and can we start again? And it's one of those conversations that you have with your clients, and then your clients go, well, actually, it's a fair point. You know, the amount of removal I've done for free.
Yeah.
And I've just brought them back in.
Yeah,
fixed
and
it.
just trying to kind of bring them back in. And I think, again, 5 years ago, when you had to say to a client, I'm going to dissolve your lips, it's absolute meltdown. They're not coming back. They don't want to answer the phone. They don't want to have the lips dissolved, do they? And they will
now it's a
run
normal
for
thing.
the hills rather than have those lips dissolved. It's crazy.
But it's a normal thing to have dissolved and done now. And,
Yeah.
you know, how many...
I think there's not as much of a stigma attached to it now, because I think people have realised that it's actually okay. And I think 5 years ago, perhaps with Dissolve in particular, people weren't necessarily understanding how much hyalase to use. So people were dissolving filler and natural collagen, and then you end up with nothing. Whereas actually now we've realised as an industry, actually that hyalase is very, very powerful, and we only need small amounts in most cases to correct something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, 100%. So just to cover a little bit, breaking the stigma around male aesthetics, you did start a campaign, not just for girls.
Yeah, hashtag not just for girls.
Not just for girls hashtag. So tell me about that. That was so... I'd not seen that before.
It started, 5 years ago maybe, and it was mainly focused on PMU.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of men that might suffer from alopecia or whatever it may be that need support. And don't get me wrong, my work back then wasn't like it is now in terms of realism. You know, and only last week I've had somebody in with well, not last week, but a few weeks back where she had no brow on one side, and I've had to replicate that. And it's like there's something here, but then there's nothing.
Yeah.
And you get this, and you get a lot with men. And I just think the stigma that surrounds did surround the industry, which I think is slowly breaking down.
It is breaking slowly.
Isn't there quite as much. So it was just, I suppose I like to be quite forward thinking. I think, well, what grabs attention? You know,
That was quite clever, that was. Do you know what it reminded me of? And I can't remember what they were, but you know them chocolate bars?
Which one?
They were these chocolate bars. They were like, back in the day, I'm going to make myself sound really old now.
Right.
And then they brought them out, but they were huge. And then they brought another chocolate bar
Not
out.
for girls, Yorkie.
That
Yes,
was it.
Yorkie,
Do you remember it?
Yeah,
It
I do remember
reminded
Yorkie.
me of that. And I thought, that's really clever, because you did something.
that did get attention
yeah,
back then,
and I'd
yeah.
not seen it before. And I thought, you know what? It actually relevates to what you were trying to say. Like, it is just not for girls. And I think when you put that out there openly,
Yeah.
it builds momentum, doesn't it?
Massively. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's not even about being positive, because sometimes there was people being negative and you'll get them laughing and slating and dropping horrible comments, and we still get it today.
Do you feel like that's when you post like a male transformation, you'll get comments?
But I think you do on women, you know, you put a nice pair of lips up and she'll be like, oh, she looks like a fish. And it's not nice for your clients, but sometimes those comments of some right being there actually does you a favour, because all of a sudden you'll get all these girls and guys that jumping in to defend you, and you're getting all these views.
Helps with the engagement.
Yeah, great, go for it. You slag me off, it's fine.
That is so funny. And I think as well, like a few years ago, if we had anything on our page that was remotely bad, I'd be like on the phone to my staff, like, oh my God, quick, delete it, like delete that because that looks terrible. But now I'm like, leave it on.
Leave it on. Yeah.
And let's show them that actually this person is being silly or whatever it is, and stand our ground with this.
Yeah,
because I think we used to kind of run away from that, and that'd be our biggest nightmare, because social media platform was everything.
We try and make it too perfect.
Yeah, agreed.
And the world's not perfect.
No.
And even down to your photos, especially in PMU, people just airbrush the life out them.
Yeah,
do you know
but
what?
you can
Put
tell.
on that she's bruising, put on that she's bleeding, because that's a real person that's come through your door.
Yeah. And I think all that people do by not doing that is they don't manage their own expectation of their client, and then their client's going to complain because they're going to say, well, my lips don't look like the photos that you put on, and then they're creating these issues for themselves.
Well, there's that, and there's also thinking about who's your catchment. So if I think about my typical client, it's anything 40, 50, 60. It's not 20-odd-year-old girls, because they don't have expendable income. Yeah. So me putting on a 50, 60-year-old woman that's bruised and is quite normal in that age bracket, or has diabetes, or educating the market, gets somebody relating to that. And do you know what? They have the expendable income. Yeah. The 21-year-old girl doesn't have that. She doesn't need like mid-face correction. That's what you want. You want that middle age. It's not, everything's going south. You're starting to lift it back up. You know what I mean? And it's just, that's reality, and they're the clients that are going to pay.
True. And I suppose that is your target audience, right? For your area of expertise. I suppose, with the exception of maybe the fine line.
Fine line can be an exception, yeah. It can be, it's a lot nice to tattoo younger skin. Thinner skin in terms of, you know, body size, because if you've got a lot of body fat, the I suppose canvas that you're working on changes a lot. It's a lot more soft and
so there's quite a lot of variables that perhaps, because I'm obviously aesthetics, so the variables I wouldn't necessarily think of, because that's not my area of expertise. So you kind of learn from experience
within PMU and SMP, whereas there's not an aesthetics. Yes, you've got to look at things you might be doing wrong, contraindications, medication, but that doesn't really change. You know, you check that you've not hit a vein, you know, how complicated can it get? So when I transferred into aesthetics, I thought it was an absolute doddle, and I probably frightened the life out of Vicky with the training academy at the time, because I just walked in there like, oh, cocky, like, here we go. But it was because it, for me, it didn't have all the other factors to factor in as to what's going to
makes sense. Does make sense.
Clients, so.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your favourite treatment that you enjoy doing the most out of everything?
It's a tough one. I think it's not necessarily a treatment area.
Okay.
I prefer clients that you're going to make a big difference to. So whether it be somebody that's had breast cancer, needs areola, if it's somebody that, like the lady with one brow completely missing, male alopecia, something like that.
Because these are small things but give people the biggest complexes, and you doing one alteration in a few hours changes their whole life.
Absolutely. So during lockdown, there was a girl contacted me called Zara Lena, and she had
I know
alopecia.
Zara.
I do, right? Yeah. Okay. So we literally within 7 weeks went from having no hair to growing a hair back with PRF.
Wow.
And it went crazy. You know, my whole Instagram broke up. Yeah. My training for PRF went mental for about 2 years.
I can imagine,
and part of that was understanding where she was in the journey. And it grew back because of various things, like she was on steroids and it was the right timing for PRF, and she's gone through a whole journey of losing it again and coming back and things like that. But the difference it made to that girl that came in broken, and she was literally broken, to then seeing her bounce back up. And then where she is now, the confidence level.
That's amazing. And what an incredible feeling that you can give to someone from just doing, you know, what you enjoy doing anyway. And just to make that person feel you can't even describe it.
Which is what the industry is about, isn't it? You know, it's about making somebody feel more them. And I think people look at the industry and think everybody's fake. It's not about that at all. Most people that come in don't want to look fake. They just want to look 10 years younger.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, again, this is perhaps the stigma going back to men. And I think that a lot of men nowadays still do think that.
Yeah.
Because I get guys that come in here with the girlfriends and they're like thinking that they're going to come out different person. And then they come out looking really nice and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, you've given her a lot of shit for this for a few weeks, but
I think, but is that not their insecurity?
Yeah.
Like, is she leveling up? And then therefore, do you know what I mean?
Controversial.
It is.
Yeah.
I think it is. You know, I remember Vicky having a client and they weren't a typical English backgrounds. And this guy come in, he was almost very forceful and he really pushed her having these treatments. And she made up some silly excuse of why she couldn't do the treatments. And then he stormed out and this little girl just thanked her.
Oh.
And she wasn't English. And again, there's cultural differences, but it was almost like you've just brought her here and forced her into doing something that she probably didn't even want to do.
That's so bad.
So, but you get that, don't you? You get different backgrounds and people's perception, I suppose, of what's morally right.
It's the perception. And I do think it's interesting what you've said about maybe the guys feel like, oh, they're going to upgrade, so they're going to like leave me and swap me for someone else when they've had all this stuff and they're thinking, looking in the mirror, taking more selfies, you know. Literally
one of my posts for in Gibraltar last week was that, but I flipped it round and said about the girls ensuring that the guys will upgrade themselves to match them.
Yeah, that's good. yeah, that's clever because again, there's not a lot of voices out there, I suppose, for the guys. It's mostly the girls because it is obviously, as we know, a mainly female dominated industry, but there are men on the rise and I think it's a good thing. And I do think there's things that men can spot that women might not always have the same approach on. So I think having that combination of different people doing the treatments is nice.
Yeah, because I think, you know, as a man, how you want to look. And I think, again, I think people assume if you're in the industry, you're gay and stuff like that. And there's a whole stigma that goes even
How many
with that.
times have you been called gay, Ian?
Oh, all the time. The thing is, it's not even a bad thing, you know, unless you're homophobic and then you'd be bothered. So
well, true.
All right, cheers.
True.
Thanks.
But it's like, people are just ridiculous. They need to grow up. Like, oh, you're gay. Yeah, great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Not offended in the slightest.
No. Says more about them.
Yeah.
Right?
Massively.
So in regards to males having these treatments, have you seen a rise in this? I know we've briefly kind of said you have.
Yeah.
But what I really want to know is, what do you think has caused that rise? What is driving men to want to do more of these treatments?
I think women are just leaving them behind. Do you know, if you look at what 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, what a 30, 40-year-old woman looked like. She looked like somebody's nana.
Yeah.
Whereas now, a 30-year-old woman can look in her 20s.
Yeah,
and
it's
you
true.
know, it's literally everybody looks 10 years younger. And I think some men that look after themselves look younger. And why the hell shouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because it's like my dad, for example, is in his 70s and he will just instantly say, I'm not doing that, it's for girls. Yeah. You know, and I think that generation, that generation is just like sometimes, but then I do have guys of the same age that are in Spain, actually, my Spain clinics, and they come in and get everything done.
Yes.
So it's really, I think it's like your culture again, where you grow up, who you're around, whether you're around a lot of women. Yeah.
I think Spanish men, you know, they wear earrings, they're very flamboyant. Yes. They dance.
And this particular
English
guy is a hairdresser. Yeah. So around women. Yeah. You know.
And again, it's how comfortable you are around women. You know, what is the problem if the salon's just mainly women? I'd go and have treatments done. It wouldn't even bother me in the slightest. See, whereas I have a client that comes to me, I won't name him because he'll kill me for dear life, but he makes me sit him in a completely separate area because he does not want to sit with all the women. And he is quite famous, so he would be recognised. Wow. But he doesn't have any trouble with women because he can get all the women he wants, but he will not sit in my waiting room and wait for a treatment. He wants to be sat somewhere else. Do you think it's just him feeling insecure about having the treatments and them known? I think so. Yeah. I think it's like he feels embarrassed. Yeah. Like he will often text me and say, "Can I come on your clothes?" And I'm like, "No, like you have to come here." Like, yeah. But I think that men do feel
that aren't around a lot of women in that environment, they do feel insecure.
Yeah. And I think if you're used to being around women that are quite dominant and have an opinion, I quite like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't want you to be like,
yeah.
use it all. I want you to fight back and say, actually, you're wrong. And confidence is sexy, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the way that everything is going now. And I think men, I agree with you. I think men have picked up on this and thought, hang on a minute. And they are listening to me with the girlfriends more when they're saying, why don't you try this? Because it'll make you look better. Yeah. And I think they're like, oh, okay, like we want a slice of the pie. We want to look good 100%. Too.
And I think also like being bald, for example.
Yeah.
It's a big thing for a man. I mean, I remember lockdown, shaved my hair off. It was the worst thing I ever did. I just looked like a little fat steroid head and had this little round football. And you just look ridiculous.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What drove you to shave your head in lockdown?
I don't know. It was a stupid
Was
decision.
it like a crisis?
Well, no, Vicky tried to cut it and then, it went wrong. And then I had this little paddy.
Oh, okay. And you were just like, get rid of it. We're in lockdown anyway. Because I do know a few men actually that shaved their hair in lockdown.
Shouldn't have done it.
Mistakes.
Yeah, big mistakes. Big mistakes. I literally would be, I mean, I've got a good head of hair and my dad has.
That's why I can't
right.
imagine you without it.
So,
yeah.
I'll be like this with PRF for the rest of my life. It will stay.
Do you find that a lot of men access the PRF?
Yes. Yeah. I think location-wise, I think certain cities are a bit more forthcoming, like Leeds. Yeah. It's quite a cool city. Do you know what I mean? It's
like Manchester.
Yeah. It does. It has that. It doesn't have that stigma. Newcastle's getting there, but again, Newcastle's feels years behind. And I think depending on if you go southwest of the UK, they're still miles behind from a male point of view. They really are. London, it's normal.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's very regional, isn't it? Like how things can change. Interesting. So what do you think makes SMP such a powerful solution for individuals that are struggling with hair loss?
I think the bottom line is you can only grow back something if it has the ability to grow back. You know, if you're talking outside that 4-5 year window of I've started to thin to have aggressively thinned, the chances are the hair follicle is dead.
Right.
So you can't grow back. The next step really is...
Okay, so that is a part of the assessment then. So you will assess them and assess whether the follicle
so if you
is still there or not.
Thinning, we'll get the camera on, we'll look at what's possible.
So use a camera for that.
Yeah,
okay.
At any one point you might have 20% of your hairs that may be dormant and not really do much. So I could probably improve it by about 20%. If there's some kind of percentage just dropped out, I could probably get that to grow back. But that would be it. I can only improve it so much. We're not miracle workers, do you know what I mean? If that hair follicle's dead, you can't replicate it. When it comes to hair transplants, they can take it from the back and obviously put it all the way through. But again, are they going to be successful? You know, mainly the reason for hair loss is down to hormones. So if you're a woman and your estrogen levels are dropping as you kind of get to that menopausal age, you lose hair. Men, it tends to be testosterone levels. Yeah. And these kind of act as buffers when they'll stop you from losing hair. And then as soon as the hormone levels change, things change. You see it a lot with men, anabolic steroids. And all of a sudden they'll go completely bald. Yeah. But if you're not genetically, if that's not genetically going to happen to you, you could take steroids and you don't. So some people get more hairy.
There's quite a lot of factors.
Yeah.
So do most SMP artists use the cameras to check?
Most SMP artists will just look at what you've got. So if you come in and you're like, your hairline's here and it should be down here, it'll be a case of, right, well, what do you want to look like? And what can we achieve? So for me, if you're thinning all over and it's not just like half way up here and it's all hairline, yes, I could probably work on hair density. And would it look good? And I can probably put density in for so much, but that might only be for so long. At some point, we might need to fully shave the head.
Oh, wow,
this is,
really?
We're talking specifically for men here. If I'm looking at you and your hairline's really far back and you want a new hairline, you're going to have to shave your head. There's no options. I can't just blend. I can't make, a dot look like a shaved head and then all of a sudden you have...
And then it's because it's just going to look obvious.
The contrast, the difference between the two lengths just doesn't work. Whereas if you just generally thin all over, yes, I can. If you've got a little bit of thinning, yes, I can blend it in beautifully. Okay. Women, on the other hand, they thin very differently. So they tend not to kind of have this where they come up. It tends to just thin from the centre and out. Yeah. Now, that's really, really good for camouflage. So I found for me, focusing on just women when no other SMP artists were focusing on women, my business boomed in that area, because my client base again was female. You're probably talking about 40 to 50% of women when they hit menopausal age lose hair. You know, and that's my client base. My client base are the 30s, 40s, 50-year-old women. So it just made sense to focus more on them. The men will come in anyway.
True.
You know what I mean? The balls, you'll see an advert, they'll either think yes or no. I think we're very much, you'll see a man might see an advert, it doesn't take him 20 times to see that advert, you'll see it once and go, yeah or no.
Yeah.
Women almost need to emotionally buy.
Yeah, agreed.
So they buy completely differently.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with men as well, they're kind of more wanting a quicker solution. That means that they don't have to go abroad. And is that something that you can like promise them on? Can you say to them, look, I can guarantee that, you know, this is going to look better?
I think you can.
You've got to be
quite transparent. So I've had 2 recently in Gibraltar that have lost a lot of hair, and it can make it look better. It can't make it look like there's a full head of hair, you know, because I'm only densifying it. But yeah, it looks a lot better, and for them, if it looks better, they're happy. And again, it's about you being transparent at the very beginning.
Yeah, and just managing that expectation.
Yeah.
If they've had a previous hair transplant, and they want to have more of a result from that, is that
perfect.
easier for
They're
you?
Perfect.
Okay, so they're your perfect ideal candidates.
They're perfect. They're not the easy. It's not the easiest skin to tattoo because it's scarred. So putting the pigment in, sometimes you might have a lot of dropout. Sometimes it pulls deeper. So you've really got to be careful when you're putting it in and build it up slowly with somebody with that's had a transplant. But because they don't hold all the hair transplant, it looks great for the first 2 years. And then you get this large dropout. And then most people don't continue with any of the medication they're on because they get sick of paying for it.
Okay.
Or they don't continue with PRF. They're then left with better hair, but not perfect hair. And this is where you can almost make it look perfect. So working with hair transplant clinics as an SMP artist is very, very good. Got quite a few friends in SMP
because they
that
should
do that.
surely be recommending that as an aftercare for their treatments, right?
Yeah, not necessarily aftercare, more of an additional, I suppose, add-on that would improve the overall results.
That they can do afterwards. Did you see the, very popular actually, did you see the place that opened in Malaga? Ronaldo has opened you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Many of my clients in Spain have been there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, just because it's Ronaldo, it's going to sell in Spain, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's it. And I will ask them because
I'm just going to put a shout out there, Ronaldo.
If you watch it,
become SMP, you know where I am.
No, but I do see a lot of men that have been to that clinic, and they come in with amazing results. Yeah. But the funny thing about it is, and this is how marketing and everything can just be so funny, they never really research it like you've just said, because they know it's his. Yeah. They book and they go.
He's a good-looking guy, isn't he? He looks after himself. So
I wonder if he's had a hair transplant. What do you think, Ian?
No, I think that's natural.
Do you? Yeah, so do I.
Yeah. It just doesn't look like a hair transplant.
Yeah.
Like, look at Wayne Rooney.
And he's not really had a stressful life, let's just be honest.
I don't know. It's got to be stressful being that famous. Although he looks like he thrives in it.
Yeah, I was going to say. Oh my gosh. So, last question on this, because I'm very interested to know the answer to this. I'm quite fair. Yeah. So if I was going to come in and I was suffering with hair loss, would you struggle with someone like me who has a...
Fair no, white yes. Okay. And white, depending on why they're white. So if you're a real blonde white, you can't really put even a cool brown or like a blondie brown into the skin. Okay. Because it's still going to draw ashy. Right. If you're grey white, slightly different. We can use a real minimal mix. So when I'm doing SMP in general, especially on men, because it's, you know, it's a bald head and everything's visible, I'm almost thinking, well, what do you look like now? And where are you from an age point of view? Because a 20-odd-year-old's head isn't the same as a 50-odd-year-old's. Sure. And I did one we did one in training last week, and we went really subtle, really light. We kept it soft. We kept it in keeping with the fact that he was 66 years old. Yeah. He doesn't want to look 21. So it's just about
adapting your techniques. Do you find that, another question, do you find that sun damage affects the top of the head?
Yes. Interesting. I have had a client in the past who likes to tan, and then he was complaining it's not holding. But you go from like white to like jet black, and I mean this guy tans, and you
Wow.
can see the visible burns. So again, it's not going to hold. You're damaging the skin. You damage your skin, it's going to remove the pigment.
So if you
it's-
had someone in that had severe previous burns on the head from the sun, you would perhaps turn that client away?
Yeah,
or...
well, on training last week when we're doing SMP, we had a guy that came in and he had clearly a skin condition. He had really bad acne. He's a builder, so he'd been out over the summer working, and you could see the sun damage. And as much as I needed a model to help with her training, I literally sent him away because
couldn't do it.
some of it would have held, some of it wouldn't, and he would have just probably looked like he had alopecia. So you're creating all of a sudden this new problem. The trainee's not really getting out of it what she should have. Do you know what I mean? So we just decided to scrap it.
It was just a
and
no-go.
We'll just find something else.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any point in compromising that just for the sake of,
It would be selfish, wouldn't it? If somebody
You've got to
just
have
done
your morals
training-
in this industry.
Yeah, and I think so. If you're fresh out of training, and you know you shouldn't do a treatment, but you're dying to get money in because you've got bills to pay, it's wrong.
Yeah,
So
you
why would
should
it be
meet-
right from a trainer point of view? Just
Yeah.
because really I'm going to have to do some extra work and come back and probably support her. Just come back and support her. It's
Yeah.
not her fault. It's not your fault.
Yeah, it's just one
It
of
is
those
what it is.
things. Yeah, definitely. So in terms of how male aesthetics is looking, fast forward 10 years from now, how do you see your key role in the industry now as being one of the first and most successful male artists? How do you see that evolving into the years to come, like into the future? Do you want to kind of be the voice and the,
I think male aesthetics, it's something that personally, from a clinic point of view, I'm starting to push quite hard.
Yeah.
And we started a video only a couple of weeks ago, and each week we're going to introduce a treatment and then talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I think just people don't talk about it. You might see results, but nobody talks about what it is, what the procedure's like. But it's quite hard, isn't it? Because a video, you've got a very short time to get it interesting, but then you've got a lot of info to kind of give.
It's a lot
it's
of
a balance,
information.
isn't it? And I think, generally speaking, men tend to like more information because they're nervous about doing it. So yeah, I think for me, on a personal level, I'd like to push that out a lot more. I think as an industry, it's going to grow anyway. You know, if you just look at men having hair transplants, 10 years ago, it was pretty much unheard of. Now it's like very common. You know, teeth. How many turkey teeth do you see now?
everywhere?
Like every drug dealer has turkey teeth. It kind of goes with the territory.
Literally. And I just feel like as well, this turkey teeth thing, and it's like
too
my
much.
son, he's 9, but because everyone around him has these amazing
Yeah.
teeth, I said to him yesterday, I said, you need to brush your teeth. And he went, I'm just going to get them turkey teeth. And I went, no, you're not. You're going to brush your teeth.
You're paying as well.
But it's crazy. Like, they just think that it's normal.
Yeah.
Whereas, like,
But it's that throwaway culture, isn't it? If something breaks, we don't fix it now. We just buy another.
yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's
crazy.
My teeth fell out. I'll just buy some new ones.
Yeah, 9.
Pass me the sweets, Mum.
Yeah. So, future-wise, career-wise for
Yeah.
you, do you see yourself actually being on the forefront with all of your actual treatments, or do you see
think-
yourself as being more kind of a leader for those that are going to follow in those footsteps?
I love training. You know, I think giving somebody the ability to earn a living, but then earn a living with passion, and then helping others as well.
Yeah.
I love training. I think from a male's aesthetics point of view, it's definitely something that I'm naturally being drawn more to. It's really difficult because I'm very good at what I do in certain areas, and it kind of pulls me back in. And then I want to have this new interest, and then I get pulled back in the other direction. And you've got to balance it, haven't you, to what makes you money, what pays your bills,
Yeah.
to then actually what you're passionate about. So I think it goes through spells, doesn't it?
It does.
We've had multiple businesses now, and
Yeah.
you know, you throw all in, then you want something new. But I think that's
It's
part
so
of being an
true.
entrepreneur.
And I say this to a lot of my girls, actually, a lot of my girls that I have on, I say to them, I understand if this is the thing that makes you the most money,
Yeah.
but if you absolutely hate that thing, then you're only going to ever get so far with it because
Yeah.
you're going to end up resenting that thing and not actually giving
Yeah.
it your 100%.
Yeah.
So I think like with what you've just said, you love the teaching,
Yeah.
that could be something you could really nurture because it's something that you're so passionate about and enjoy and make it into your main money earner.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's difficult to teach, and it's quite a skill because being a good artist or good at aesthetics doesn't mean that you're a good teacher, and they're two
True.
very, very different
True,
things.
because you have to be able to kind of also pick up how your learner's feeling, body language,
the type of learner,
exactly, and whether they're feeling overwhelmed, pressured. And if you don't have that skill, then they're not going to learn anything, are they?
How many people do you have to retrain? We all have to retrain in this industry because they've just not been given the support.
Yeah.
Or they've put a 1-day course when it should be like 6 weeks for the content that they've got.
Yeah, and they ring and you feel the most sorry for these people because they've obviously had limited funds to pay, which is why it was crap, because they've gone for cheap training. Yeah. And then they end up spending double because
sometimes it's expensive. Some of them really spend $7,000 and you're like,
I know, I've had this before and I'm like, wow, like really? And that will often because of something that they've seen that's actually fake, like a fake Instagram account with fake followings.
Yes.
I've seen this so many times and I'm like, but those followers aren't real. No. But not everyone's able to.
But it's how do you spot that?
It's so hard to spot, especially nowadays. Like some of the biggest doctors in the country have got big fake followings.
We're not going to name them.
No, we're not.
No.
Ian.
Fake.
It's hard though. It's hard. We'll put that in. Yeah. It's hard though, Brad, to spot it unless you know how to analyse the following number against the likes, the comments. It is so difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I think, you know what? People sometimes bought them years ago and like one of my accounts, it's pretty much ruined. I've still used it because it's
because your engagement might as well.
But years ago, I'm like, I didn't know all this, and that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then as you get a little bit wiser, it's like,
this is so true. And I know a guy actually who owns MOT centres.
Yeah.
Okay, he owns MOT centres, and he said to me, oh, like my friend told me that I should just buy all these followers. And I looked at his account and his account was actually doing pretty well to say that he had under 1,000 followers. And I said to him, if you literally buy those followers, you're going to kill your engagement in about an hour. Yeah. Social suicide. Just don't do it.
It is.
And it's the temptation of not doing it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, if you look at a page and they have 1,000 followers and you look in a week and they're at like 10,000.
But I think the point is though, it's all about stroking out egos, isn't it? Whether you be a doctor or any walk of life.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at me, I've got all these followers. And it's a very egotistical world that we live in now. Yeah. And everybody's trying to stroke their own ego to a certain degree.
True, because how many of those followers are actually paying the bills?
Yeah. Yeah.
Less than half.
Like, I know Insta versus what I get on Facebook, it's so much more on Facebook, and it's probably because I've ruined one of my Insta accounts and I'll be pissed about that. But at least I admit it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about owning it, isn't it? And not being like, oh no, I didn't do that. Like, no, just own it if you've done it. Like, people are going to know anyway.
Yeah, we all screw up.
We do. But do you find that you get a lot of business on Facebook?
Yes. Yeah, much more than I do Insta. Now, if we look at the Gibraltar Clinic, because that's been done right, largely not me, but it has been done right. It's completely different. We get so much more there. So my UK business is very much Facebook. In my personal account, I get so much off my personal account.
Yeah, so do I.
And I think, do you know what? Keep it real.
I think that's the difference, because you can have your brand in your business. That's really good advice, actually. And that can be very professional. But if you compare that with some personal branding and some personality, people really enjoy that because it makes them feel, it's the nurturing, isn't it? Makes them feel more...
People like to get to know you, but people buy from people. Some people think I'm an absolute knob, and sometimes I am. But other people think, actually, you kept it real, you said how it is.
At least I knew what it was, and that's now my decision rather than being blindsided. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like, how many fake people do you see? And just be you. Because people will come to you because you're you. You'll have your own followers that buy and you think, actually, I could see myself on a night out with you, and I could have a beer with you, and I could. That's just you, isn't it? Yeah,
and I actually said this to one of my girls as well last week, because she had brought a fake following. Yeah. And she was like, Jess, I can't get the engagement up. And I said to her, would it be so crazy to just start a new one? And she said,
it's terrifying that.
She went, everyone will know. Yeah. Everyone will know, because she said, I'm not going to get the... that she will get so much further setting up a new one and giving it a year than she will ever on that account. Yeah. And it's just biting that bullet and that like swallowing that ego of like, okay, here I am. I've been here for 10 years and I have 100 followers.
And also sometimes some of the people that are on there that do follow and do engage with you, you don't really want to lose them.
Yeah.
So I do get it.
Yeah. It's a hard one, isn't it? Maybe it's time for that account, Ian.
Yeah.
To go. So what advice would you give, particularly to men that are either watching or listening, that feel like they would love to come into this industry, but they're just so terrified of what that stigma that might come with? What would you give maybe your younger self, or you if you weren't kind of the way that you are now? Because you're very confident.
My youngest self loved being around girls.
Really?
Like a female industry.
Yeah.
Like the fitness industry was full of women. And I think I grew up around a lot of aunties. And they'd be there all getting pissed and having talk that you probably shouldn't have been privy to. I'm used to being around women. So I think...
So it was like a comfort thing for you, like normal.
Most of my mates growing up were either gay or women. And that was okay. And like I went out drinking in the gay scene because I was the only straight guy out there. So it made sense because every gay guy had 2 girls with him, and it was like an easy night out.
Yeah.
From a point of view. Whereas if you go into the normal, it is, it's clever.
Yeah.
But if you go into the normal area, everybody's fighting over the 1 girl to the 10 blokes.
That is so clever that you figued that out.
They've ruined the gay areas now because everybody goes there. Okay, it's become
now
popular.
Everyone's like,
now
let's go to the
being
gay area because that's where all the hot girls are.
Exactly. So ruined the life. But yeah, I think it's about what you're comfortable with. For some men, it would be uncomfortable being around women all the time. But I think if that's going to be the case, why can't you have a niche? Like SMP can be a very male dominant thing. My SMP never has been. You know, I don't have this male clinic. I'll have males that come into our aesthetics clinic and they just kind of fit in, and it tends to be referrals from the wives and things like that, that you're starting to get thin or you need Botox or whatever it may be. It's referral based. So I think it's just confidence, isn't it?
It's confidence. But like, what advice could you give them to just take the leap, like, and just think, you know what?
I think general advice, like, why do you care what people think of you? Like, I really don't care if you don't like me, because who are you? I think there's very few people I've ever looked at in life where I'm really concerned about what their opinions are. I might be concerned about other peers and, you know, working together and not ruining reputations and things like that. But generally speaking, if you don't like me, that's cool. I probably don't like you either.
Can't like everyone. You can't win them all.
You know,
so you have to still stay in your lane and do what serves you the purpose.
Yeah, and I think
rather than worrying. And I think that does come with age, experience, life experience, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it probably a lot of the time when I was younger it was probably ego, and I didn't really care, and I was probably a bit arrogant. That's probably become less over the years, and actually I've just become more confident. Whereas the truth is, I probably wasn't, you know, confident getting up on the stage or whatever it may be, but I'd do it anyway, just because I love confidence. And it's like a front, isn't it? When you get in there, because it's not easy talking.
And no one knows that you're feeling like that except for you in that moment. So you just have to fake it till you make it.
But it's not even that though, is it? It's like it's doing something repetitively, because how do you become good at public speaking without public speaking?
You have to keep doing it.
How do you become good at injecting without injecting? So you've got to throw yourself into it and just try, because do you know what? You're going to fail. You get back up and try again.
And that's like, better than not even trying.
It is, or you just stay in your 9-to-5 job that you hate and you're in shit money.
Coasting. You're just coasting through life, and you only ever going to get so far. Because if you're not feeling that feeling, you are not outside of your comfort zone. Yeah,
and I think we change. You know, you can't say you're the same person you are now to 10 years ago.
No, absolutely
what you want, what you need, what drives you. You know, what knowledge you've had through failed experiences and things like that. You become a different person. So, like, even now, my direction of my business is changing all the time, which is good,
because you're evolving.
Becomes exciting. You know, I don't want to be stuck where I was, because actually I wasn't very happy doing certain things. So I've molded the business to move, and it keeps it interesting, doesn't it? Yeah,
definitely. And I think that what you've said about ego is the industry's biggest pitfall. And I think the ego is not discussed enough in this industry. And it's kind of like, you know, there'll be an event and the car parks are full of these big 4x4s, nice cars. You know, it's almost like people do it to show what they can get rather than actually what internally makes them feel fulfilled.
It is.
And I think that's a big thing that the industry perhaps needs to just calm down with.
I think not just the industry. I think generally speaking, like how many people have a nice car on the drive just to impress the neighbour, as opposed to doing things that make you happy, and that's not just in work but outside of life. But you only get that with age, and you start thinking about, well, everything I did when we be going out weekends or whatever, it no longer becomes interesting to you. You kind of outgrow that shit.
You do, because you're just like, wow, that's thing. You evolve. You faced any unique challenges that have stuck out for you within your career that you've thought, oh?
I think some of the biggest challenges we've ever done from a business point of view is just how toxic the industry is. And I think you start to have some success and people just love to drive you down. Like the awards at the weekend, that whole drama of somebody that wasn't even attending, accusing somebody of, you know, getting trophies that was there, and there were two different people.
I saw that. Like,
you're such a moron going on with your little keyboard to put people
keyboard
down.
Warriors. Yeah, they hate it. And I saw that and I thought, that is such a shame because it's...
And they weren't there.
They weren't even there. They weren't even there. And to make someone else feel like they're not worthy of something that they've worked hard for, it's sad, isn't it?
And you get
like,
it with...
just mind your own business.
Yeah, I think we got a lot with training academies, especially Blarte, because it boomed overnight. And you went from one educator to 14, and it was just like, I don't care what anybody else is doing. And do you know, it's really nice to see somebody do well. I've took students from PMU to now they're teaching. I don't care that they're teaching in my area. I don't care if you've got a clinic next door. I'll teach you that. Because people buy from you. And I think it's you being so, you know, inferior and just feeling shit about yourself that you need to put somebody else down. Like, why do you need to do it?
It's horrible. And the amount of people that I interview on this podcast that have had at some point someone be absolutely awful to them, and people just don't understand how that affects you.
They don't. And I think, you know, it's frustrating, and then you want to snap, and then you want to, especially if it's online, you want to go out of the back. And I think it depends on what your personality is. And years ago, I used to fight with everybody online. I didn't care. If you had said something, I'm going to
some of these forums, though, right, on Facebook can get nasty, I've heard. I'm not in them, but I've heard that the forums can get quite, like, heated.
Yeah, they can. And I think it's just mad, isn't it? Like, why would you go to the effort of just putting somebody down, or you know, trying to trash their business because you're crap at your social media and you can't build yourself? Do you know what I mean? It is, isn't it? I'm going to put you down to try and make me feel better. Again, ego. You're trampling on somebody just to make yourself feel a little bit empowered.
Not good.
No.
Not
You're a bit
cool.
weak as a person.
Not cool.
No.
Stop doing it. Weak. Well, it's been so nice to have you on and talk to you, Ian. I've really enjoyed our chat today. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.